Hey everybody, it's me, it's David Russell Mosley, and I just wanted to make this probably won't go for too long, but I wanted to make a video just briefly talking about my new book, The Green Man, talk a little bit about why I wrote it, where some of the ideas came from, just things like that. And I'm going to wait a few minutes to see if anybody else is going to join live. So if you see me looking over here, it's because I'm looking at my computer as well as at you, the camera. So yeah, I just want to, take a couple minutes, talk about why I wrote the book and things like that. I'm doing this video, by the way, in part because I've been meaning, and some of you may have even signed up for a link to join a virtual book launch, and honestly, it's just between work and everything else, I haven't had an opportunity of really finalizing that, putting it together, working with the people that I want to be part of that and who have volunteered and said that they're willing to be part of that. So I wanted to take just a couple minutes, talk about the background of the book, talk about my interest in the Green Man, and maybe read a couple of poems. So, I've got a couple people watching, so thank you all for joining me. So let's talk about the Green Man. First things first, I figure it might be helpful to talk about what drew me to the notion of the Green Man and what the Green Man is. I know not everybody's necessarily familiar with the Green Man. So first of all, I have visual aids. I have here this beautiful little acrylic cast of an actual carving of a Green Man sculpture. So this image here can be found in Worcester Cathedral in the UK. And this is a replica that's been taken from that original carving. This comes from the choir stalls at Worcester Cathedral. So if you travel throughout Europe, and especially in England, and you go into any medieval church, you're likely to find little foliate heads like this. It wasn't until much later that the name Green Man began to be applied to these figures. They've been called a variety of things. Foliate head was the most common kind of architectural reference for them, but Jack in the Green, Robin in the Green, Robin Hood, Puck, all of these names and more have been associated with this kind of nature creation figure. I first got introduced to him when I was living in the United Kingdom with my wife doing my PhD, and went to Southwell Minster. It's this gorgeous, beautiful church, the main part of which I believe is from the 17th century, but it's got an 11th or 12th century chapter house in it. And in there you'll find these foliate head, these Green Man carvings. And I've been enamored with them, wondering why. Why did these Gothic and medieval architects choose to include these figures? So many people think of the Green Man as this kind of pagan figure. And I don't want to deny the possibility of a kind of pagan background. But it seems to me that his inclusion in church architecture isn't about trying to hold on to something pagan, but rather trying to baptize it, trying to say that Christ came not just for humans, but that by becoming a creature, he is raising up all of created reality. And the Green Man becomes kind of a way of talking about the personification of nature, of creation as such. This carving, incidentally, or this replica, also incidentally led to the cover for my book. This is a woodcut. There's actually a more, the original version of the woodcut in here, which you can see right here. This was done by my friend and woodworking artist, Tyler DeLong. I'm very grateful to him. It's a combination of this image and then an image that was on his door growing up. And you can find Tyler DeLong on Facebook and see some of the other things that he does with woodworking, including the prints that he does. So, always been enamored with this notion of the Green Man, or not always, but have been for about a decade or so. And it was a couple years ago I started to sit down and start writing poetry really seriously. That is, writing it intentionally, trying out different forms, trying out different things to reflect on. And I was part of a writing group at the time in New Hampshire, and I was writing a decent amount of kind of nature-inspired poetry, and the members of the writing group told me, hey, David, I think you've got enough poems here to make up a little nature collection. And so I started putting those together and then looking at how long it was, trying to figure out how to arrange them. And that led ultimately then to this book, The Green Man. So I'm really proud of this. I've published 2 other books. One other with Resource Publications, who put out The Green Man. That's my novel on the edges of Elfland. And of course I did my doctoral dissertation with Fortress Press. But I had dabbled in poetry when I was younger. I think everybody does, especially during my more emo phase back in high school. And but I never thought that I'd actually sit down and write poetry seriously or get it published or get paid to write it in any way. And so I'm incandescently happy that this book exists. I wrote this book not only because I'm interested in the Green Man or I just wanted to write poetry, but because I think that poetry can do certain things for us. That not that other different genre of writing or different aspects of life can't also do for us. It's just poetry does it in a unique way. And that is that poetry can help us see the world around us in a new light, and hopefully in a truer or deeper light. You see this in the work of people like Samuel Taylor Coleridge. You see this in the work of modern poets today like Dana Gioia, Scott Cairns, Malcolm Guite, Lucy Shaw. Their poetry is so suffused with this notion of the kind of grander aspects of everyday reality. And I wanted to take that and apply it specifically to nature poetry. Sorry, I'm messing with the lighting because there was something sticking up and I saw that somebody was watching, and I'm trying to get the lighting back. Okay, I think we're good now. But I wanted to show nature in a new light. I wanted to look at nature. I'm somebody who has very firmly believed for a long time that what we can sense is not all that there is. That a tree is not just a tree, that there's more to it than that. And so I decided to write this book. And so, like I said, I'm very pleased that this book is out. You may have seen, if you're familiar with the poet Malcolm Guite, he recently did one of his spells in the library on my book and read a couple of the poems out of it. I strongly recommend, if you're not familiar with Malcolm Guite, that you become familiar with him. He's an astonishing poet who's definitely influenced how I write poetry. But he's also just a wonderful person. So he did that. I have 2 very kind blurbs on the back of my book from the poet and theologian and biodynamic farmer Michael Martin, and then another wonderful one from the theologian, especially one who works in theology and the arts, and the director of the Hank Center at Loyola University Chicago, Michael P. Murphy. I won't read those to you, that seems too self-aggrandizing. But yeah, I've just been overwhelmed by the response to my book, by the generosity of all those who helped bring this book about, all those who have supported me in my writing, my wife, even my children, who at the age of 7 have listened to a lot of these poems. yeah, I've just been so grateful for all of that. But I wrote this with the hope that it would help me and help you look at the world around you and see it a little differently and hopefully a little more clearly. I just wanted to show a couple of other things, and then I'll read, well, one other thing really, and then I'm going to read a few poems. But I just wanted to show you this notebook, which you can see says poetry, and I've had to add to it, and teaching 2020 to 2021. This is the notebook where most of the poems of the Green Man were written. It's also where I write down my lecture notes for my new college class. But it's not where all of them are from. I've got some older notebooks and some other notebooks that saw a lot of these poems written in them. But it was this one in particular where they came from. And I don't know, I think it's kind of neat that I can point to a physical source of the origin of them. Okay, that's enough of all that. Let's read a couple poems to hopefully whet your appetite so that if you haven't got a copy, you will at least consider getting one. I would, of course, be incandescently happy if you chose to do that. And of course, if you have gotten a copy and you've read it, please consider leaving a review on Amazon. My phone is dying already today. But please, if you have read it, consider leaving a review on Amazon and on Goodreads. That always helps get the book into more hands. Or if you didn't like the book, then leaving a negative review actually helps keep it from people seeing it. So either way, leave a review. Hey, Jeffrey Bishop is here. Hey, Jeff. Thanks for showing up. So talking about The Green Man, my debut book of poetry, let's dive in a little bit. Let's hear a couple of poems. And actually, before I do that, one last just remark for you to know that the layout of the book was something I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to organize them. And I ended up organizing it largely around the 4 seasons with 2 preceding sections. So in the 4 seasons, it begins with autumn, then goes into winter, then spring, then summer. That was really intentional. Trying to think about new life, think about the new heavens and the new earth, and organize the book in such a way that rather than ending either in spring or winter, to have it end in summer, right, at the height of things. And before that section then is a short section on, it's just simply called Creation. It's a series of 7 sonnets reflecting on the 7 days of creation. And then that's followed by a shorter section on loss, a section of looking at how we maybe lost this sense of vision of the deeper reality around us and in creation. But I'm going to start with an autumnal poem, specifically one of my Green Man poems. Each of the seasons has its own Green Man poem to kind of set the stage for the book and really get at this sense of who or what is the Green Man. So this is my poem, The Green Man in Autumn. The air is crisp, the berries have turned brown, the final harvest has been taken in, the once new leaves have dropped from the Green Man's crown, and the summer's sun has come to rest and dims. A cooling breeze sends shiver through his limbs and fells the apples from their gnarled trees. In his basket he piles them to the brim, and he makes a draught that fills us up with ease. He sits in his cave and wanders off in sleep, taking with him the trees and plants he governs. The conifers he sets to watch, to keep a lonely eye on his domain. For love learns that what is dead will someday soon arise, and bring with it new life, new joy, new sunrise. So that's, one of my Green Man poems. There's a fly that is just everywhere on me right now. But hopefully you can see, just in that poem, some of the things I'm trying to do with this notion of the Green Man and this notion of these deeper realities hidden in creation. On that front, I'm going to read another poem from the autumn section. This one is simply called Trees. There is a microcosm in a tree, The universe is bound inside a nut. Instead of stars, her branches are filled with leaves. Her wandering roots make open ways once shut. Her bark is home to a million little lives. Some we can see, but some beyond our sight. Birds make homes in her branches. They prize the stable nature of her humble fight. And in her roots more creatures make their home. A fungal network taught them all to talk and helps them send some food right through the loam. A hidden world exists from stem to stalk. And yet this is not all there is to see. This is not all that makes a tree a tree. So again, with that poem, wanting to look at something very ordinary, and even in this one you can see I tried to focus primarily on very ordinary tree imagery, talking about just the trees, the mycorrhizal fibers that connect their roots, their bark, their branches, and yet trying to hint at something more in all of that. At least I hope you can see that. I'm going to move on now to another section. I'm going to move to the winter section and read my poem, The Ballad of Whiskey. I'm very happy to say that a close friend of mine, Mark Forrester, took this poem with him before the book was written, when he went to Scotland with his wife, and I think his daughter was born at that point. There's a plane flying overhead, so I'm going to just talk loudly for a second. But he took this poem with him and read it aloud in the tasting room of the Lagavulin distillery. So I have that fine distinction. I also want to quickly say a thank you to Christy Vendetti McClellan for her little heart emoji earlier. Thank you, Christy. So this is my poem, The Ballad of Whiskey, which it's too early for me to have one right now. Although, actually, I had an Irish coffee with breakfast. So I have the day off. My kids are at school. My wife is out getting a manicure. It's just me at home, so I get to do fun things. Anyway, The Ballad of Whiskey. You warm me from the inside out and fill me to the brim. You charm me with your Scottish clout, with your amber color dim. Now stoke the fire and pack your pipe, fill your glasses well. Your drink is not of common type. Please listen to it tell of island home and salt sea air, of peat and smoke and fire, of mounts and woods and old men's prayer, of Andrew's cross and English ire. It sings the song of Scotland with every single sip. It sends me to my homeland when it meets my lips. I've been encouraged to try and set that to music. I've tried a couple of times and I can't come up with anything I particularly like. I'm going to do one more out of the winter section because I really like this poem. And I think it's awfully fun. And it reflects on a particular phenomenon that I just love to see. If you've ever watched a group of starlings in the sky and you see this like massive cloud of birds undulating and changing as they fly, that's called a murmuration. And I'm just fascinated by how that works. And so I wrote a poem about murmurations called, very imaginatively, Murmuration. Twisting and swirling in amoebic shape, the citizens of the sky take their strange flight, gyring and gimbaling a heavenly wave, a living, breathing Mobius strip on high. Starlings, why do you dance in this shimmering form, combining and recombining phase to phase, transitioning like water to ice, then warm to vapor through sublimating ways? Perhaps it is just physics and survival. You do not dance but fight to stay alive. Your ratio of 1 to 7 is primal physics, causing you to turn and jump and dive. But something tells me there is more to see, if only we had hearts and eyes set free. All right, we'll move into the spring section, and I want to read a poem that I wrote back in New Hampshire before we moved out here to Spokane, and really tried to reflect what it looks like when spring starts to come in New Hampshire. So this is called Spring Comes to New Hampshire. The melting snow leaves the ground soft, readying the land for planting. Trees are drained and sugar shacks are stuffed to the brim, boiling, grunting, old and young alike delight. But promised warmth always leaves us wanting, as frost is found in early morning light. Yet the cold of winter cannot stay. It soon gives way to mornings warm and bright. After death comes life, some say, always returning, never quite the same. The long nights passed by longer days, winter's sleep becomes vernal fame. And I too find myself changed. Like a star I feel my life aflame. The fire burns, I am not pained, but refined in iridescent shine. My death in sleep is thus exchanged for this greening life of mine. As herbs grow, so too do I, breathed into life like prayer at Compline. Like effoliation, trees leaved, budding first, then bursting forth, in peace like a sword sheathed. This spring will see a fulsome dearth of life to live that is of worth. We'll do one more spring poem, and then I'll do a final poem from the towards the very end. Because I actually forgot to mention that after the summer section comes another section of what I called Songs of the Church. And so there are a series of poems reflecting on various saints and other things. So this is the last poem in my spring section, The Word Wood, or the Library Forest. There are words in the wood on every single branch, reaching out their arms to touch the sky. They do not break and they will never blanch, but they'll keep trying. Oh yes, they'll try to reach us, to teach us, to find us and bring us into the dappled places, the darkened places, below the earth, below the mushrooms grim, and down into infinite root-filled spaces, where we'll be captured, raptured into tree veins, and feed the ones who feed us with their breath. We'll give up ourselves, the last of our remains, and breathe the tree-ish words of life and death. We hear the words bound up in forest wood. We can become them. It will do us good. All right, so we won't skip over. We'll read the title poem, which is The Green Man, here in the summer section. And then I'll read one last poem from the very end of the book. Again, thank you to everybody who has shown up today and listened to me waffle on. Again, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, if you don't already have a copy of The Green Man, and you've liked what you've heard so far, you'll consider getting a copy. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, online. It's not on the shelves. On Amazon, most independent bookstores now, it can be ordered through them. If you live here in Spokane, by any chance, you can actually go to Auntie's bookstore, and they've got a couple of copies of it. In fact, if you buy them all up, maybe they'll stock more. So think about that. All right, The Green Man. Effoliating foliage, he haunts his local habitation, the tutelary spirit ripener of wildest blackberry, protector of the bee's humblest wants. From cloves to honeysuckles, from elm to maple, he cares for the wood as if it were his garden. The iridescent lights of night are starred in his eyes. He gathers food for his greenwood table, and once in ages now so long forgotten, his greening power helped even us to grow. He was our teacher and our dearest friend. But now on the new wine we are besotted, drunk on this technological flow. Still, even in the gales, he will not bend. And then the last poem I want to read is, in fact, the last poem of the book, and it is called The Holy Grail. And for those of you familiar with the work of Sergei Bulgakov, this is directly influenced by his essay, The Holy Grail. Who held the holy chalice that caught his blood, blended with the shimmering water of life, catching it, this strange admixture rife with all the active potency of the good? And who was washed in this outpouring flood, made into the bridegroom's newfound wife, washed away from pain, from death, from strife, and into the paradisal garden wood? It was the earth who received the blood and water, and the green man carried it through the flowers, the trees, through all living things without fail. He bore the chalice, he became the altar. Christ spreading through everything by his greening power, and so the earth became the Holy Grail. All right, thank you again, everybody who watched this live. I'm going to try and, this will obviously be posted on Facebook, but I'll try and get it onto my YouTube channel as well, so that you can watch it there if you weren't able to be here live. So again, thank you all for listening, for following along. Again, if you like what you heard, please feel free to go get yourself a copy. If you already have a copy, please consider leaving a review. But either way, thank you so much for your support. That's all for now. Maybe, hopefully, in the not too distant future, I'll be able to actually set up a real live virtual book launch. And maybe once Delta is done and the pandemic is finally over, I can do an in-person book launch here in Spokane. God bless you all. I pray that he watches over you and keeps you safe. All right, I'll see you guys some other time. God bless.